Hello and welcome everyone to the OB15 first inaugural Realm Royale patch notes. My name is Pretty Hair. I will be hosting today's show alongside a slew of special guests here, of course, the first of which being Mr. Kret himself, of course, followed by Chuck, our art director, and our beloved community specialist, Jay Nash.
That's the slew.
That's the stuff. That's the slew. That's the slew. That's the stuff we're getting into today. We got a whole bunch of cool stuff for you guys today. Some new content, some balance updates, some map changes, all kinds of great stuff. But a big note here before we get into that is that, of course, free to play on PlayStation 4, Xbox, and PC. But Josh, we're getting a little bit closer and striving to have a more regular patch cycle.
Right, yeah. I know over the past few months, we've been really working on getting the core of the game in place, and now we're at a great place in open beta, so we're moving towards a 3-week patch cycle.
Nice.
Sometimes might be 2 weeks, sometimes might be 4 weeks, but we're aiming for 3 weeks. And
Precisely when it is ready.
Yes. And we're working on each patch containing content or map updates, new features, so it should be really exciting going forward. I'm personally excited for this patch, and I know it's coming up soon, so we got some really cool stuff in the works.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm really excited to get into this. I know you guys are here for it as well, so let's hop right on into it. The first thing up, and this has been teased a couple of different ways up on Twitter. I'm very excited for this personally and the implications this might have, but it's going to be catapults. So, Kret, first talk us through what is the goal of these catapults? Where are they going to be, and how am I going to interact with them?
So catapults are awesome because they give you an opportunity.
Would you say that they're the superior siege weapon, or are you more of a, obviously, we're not really trebuchet people here.
If I needed to really knock down a fort and I had plenty of time, I might consider building a trebuchet. But a catapult,
wow, look at that.
It's just more practical.
That's epic.
And I don't think you'd want someone to throw you.
No, you wouldn't.
Seems so dangerous.
For
Okay,
transportation.
so we're not sieging a castle. That's been processed of elimination out. What's left? What else could we be using this for? Look at that red velvet cushion seat.
That's right. It's comfortable.
We got some bougie catapults.
Actually,
If you're going to transport yourself, the answer is a catapult.
Wow.
You just got to be ready.
a
Okay.
bougie Da Vinci catapult.
Bougie
Da
Vinci catapult.
tension catapult.
So we're in the catapult. My UI, my crosshair has changed a little bit here. What am I aiming at exactly?
Yeah, so the
with this?
catapult turns around. It's a little slow, so you can get ahead of it, and then
Yeah.
it'll turn up. It'll catch up to you. That's where you're gonna go when you launch the catapult.
So even if I'm actively spinning, my little vertical dot and 2 arrows, that's where I will.
That's where the
if I
catapult is
click-
aiming.
The directional
space, sorry.
indicator.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So even if you are spinning, because there's a little bit restricted there, that is where you will launch. That's your projected trajectory.
Because someone could be shooting at you. And
Yeah,
they would
exactly.
Just pull the trigger.
That's
Right.
that was kind of my next question. Is this a heat of battle thing? You know what I mean? Can you
It could be.
Can you get knocked out of this if you take enough damage? What happens if you get chickened while you're sitting in the seat?
All very good questions.
The most fun question being, what happens if you're chickened in the seat?
Can you get in this as a chicken and chicken
Yes.
launch yourself?
Oh, you can.
Absolutely.
As you guys know, our Realm Royale chickens, they're 200 IQ. These guys have big brains. They know how to operate Da Vinci catapults. Doesn't really matter for them. So how many, this is a little bit above Lumberfall. Before we actually, hit the glorious spacebar button in there, how many of these bad boys are going to be around the map, and are they marked?
They are marked. You can see them there in that sort of teal-ish color. There's
so we got
5.
Cool.
They're spread around the map, each of them in a different location. They're going to have sort of different tactical advantages, right? Some of them might be higher up, or they might give you a nice route to somewhere else. So this Lumberfall one could get you into Fungal Jungle,
Sure.
which has been slightly renamed.
Guys, they renamed it. I was going to say Fungal Jungle. Where the hell's that?
That's right. Now, when you get in this catapult, it is
Okay.
going to send you very high.
Okay.
So high, in fact, that you will begin to skydive again.
Well, shall we rock and roll?
I think we're
I think
ready.
it's time to rock and roll here, and there it is. I mean, the only natural reaction there to being catapulted high into the sky, so you're going to re-skydive and land. Can you pull up the map for us? Let's just see about how far you went. And that's X far. You will go that far every time. You can't aim yourself higher or lower. You can only change.
The vertical height is set.
Okay.
You have a little bit of air control, so you could go a little left, a little right, maybe a little further or a little shorter.
Sure.
And then some catapults will be at different elevations.
That's true.
So if you're at a higher location and you're going down, you're going to get some more range. But it does go pretty far, pretty fast.
Is there a
So-
term for that block? We're going about half a block, half a kilometer.
Grid?
Half a grid. Half a grid space there from that Lumberfall
What if you're
catapult.
pushing forward?
If you're pushing forward, you're going to go a little bit further.
Okay.
Let's go for a max distance.
Yeah, let's do it.
That was really cool, and I think this has a lot of gameplay implications, right? This is to get you out of the emergency fog that's collapsing on you, stuff like that. You drop at Lumberfall, it's very high traffic area. Most of these catapults are in fairly high traffic areas, so you get a bad drop, you don't get a gun or the gun you want, you don't feel comfortable taking that fight. I feel like the catapult is a fairly strategic exit. How loud is this? How apparent is this to the rest of your point of interest that you have just launched yourself?
It's got a pretty solid ka-thunk.
Okay.
And if I could hear it, right? If I heard it and I had like a sniper and I'm good,
Right.
you might be able to land that shot.
Wow. So some hype clips definitely in the making here. And so talk about, Chuck, implementing these into the map. Did you guys have to clear space on the level for these? How did you plan out where exactly you wanted these to go?
Yeah, we came up with the catapult platform that you saw underneath the catapult, which was to assure that the catapult had a clear zone of rotation. And they also give you a little bit of a visual indicator when you're in the local area. So the catapult is a little easier to locate. So you've got these circles of clearance, and then we had just adjusted the local areas to kind of fit those platforms.
And so where exactly these went, so we've got one in Lumberfall. Was that decision, is that more of a gameplay thing, or is that, level design oriented where this is a good place to fit this, or this is a high traffic area? What was the choice behind where we wanted these to go and how many we wanted to have around the map?
So we tried to spread them around so there was a catapult sort of near to you if you were anywhere on the map.
Sure.
And then we wanted to put them sort of on the edges of a POI, right? Like if they're in the direct center, it might be a little disruptive to the gameplay of that POI in general. But on an edge, it creates some interesting options, right? Like if there's people at the Lumberfall Forge,
Right.
you and the homies could go for an aerial assault. Now when you land, you are gonna hard land. That does leave you vulnerable. But you're moving so fast and there's so much displacement that you could really sneak up on some people.
He's doing
right?
it. He's doing the assault on the forge.
There it is. And I think that's
he's on the
obviously,
roof.
that's right where my mind went when I saw these catapults. I tend to be on the more aggressive side. I tend to love my high mobility options. I love to, I want to clear Lumberfall and I want to get out. I want to launch to the Fungal Jungle or my next place that I want to strike at. So I think that's a really cool thing for me. But talk about, level design wise, Realm Royale is a pretty big map, but we do have the horses. We have the mounts, right? So how does this really affect in terms of the base movement speed? Because with everyone having a horse, you know what I mean? That sort of effectively becomes the base travel time between places. So when you're placing and distancing these things out from each other, how did you kind of come to the decision where you wanted these?
So we wanted to set it up in such a way that if you planned a route and you're going from point A to point B, there's a catapult in the middle, it was a no-brainer, right? But we didn't want to make it where if I'm anywhere in Lumberfall going
It's more
anywhere
effective.
else, I should always go to the catapult. Because
Gotcha.
then it's a little too much. It's a little too intrusive, right? Pathing and going somewhere should still be pretty obvious. And generally, if you're trying to get from point A to point B, straight line's the way to go. Catapult, if it's on the way, could make a lot of sense. And I think, your more advanced players are gonna consider planning some routes, right? I'm going to loot Lumberfall from north to south, so I end up at the catapult.
Okay.
Now I'm already on my way to the next point where I want to go.
Awesome.
Right. Or if you're collecting stuff in the local area and you want to forge,
Yeah.
you can shoot yourself over there.
True. Yeah, we saw that be pretty effective there in Lumberfall. And before we get into the new weapons, I want to talk about what I'm seeing being currently held by my man. It shoots like a slug rifle, but it doesn't really look like the slug rifle that I'm used to.
It
Chuck.
does now.
You better learn today, boy.
Yeah, we did a really thorough pass on pretty much all of the weapons in the game, just kind of analyzing them for different things. So the first thing we did was we adjusted what the rarities look like. You can see now this is the common rarity, which before was black and white. Common rarities now are kind of steel and blue and gray and not super glowy. They just look as you would think a common weapon would look.
Yep.
The uncommon weapons are green and bronze with green glowies. The epic weapons are kind of this magical icy metal with purple trim and purple glowies, and then the legendaries are the legendaries. We wanted that to be pretty consistent across all the weapons, and yet we also just polished them so we have cooler, nicer appearance of each of the rarities.
Perfect. And that's epic,
And
obviously.
then the slug rifle and the shotgun, there were things about them that just didn't feel consistent with what those weapons were kind of doing. The slug rifle had this kind of crazy bell-shaped cone that made it feel
More of a musket.
blunderbussy.
Yeah.
And, you know, the shotgun, we also kind of wanted to get it a little bit more traditional, you know,
Yeah.
the
little pump
top and bottom
action.
barrels, yeah. So we made a few structural adjustments to those objects as well. So
Yeah, that was a case where the gameplay really felt right, but we wanted to make sure that
Sure.
the weapon and the gameplay were in sync.
right, it looked
Sure.
like it was going to do the thing that it was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, these two weapons have definitely hit the gym, and we've kind of navigated our way over to a little bit of a colder climate here, and this is going to lead us, I think, into some of our map changes and a new weapon that we are being added. So go ahead, fire us on over to that castle in the middle of what I believe is Ice Haven, correct?
Yes, this is the new Ice Haven Lake Island Forge.
Yeah.
What might we find here? Any new treasures for us?
Well, you're going to find this forge, and it's built into the lake in a different sort of way, because we had this awesome ice lake, and really you didn't have a great reason to go into the center of it.
In
Yeah.
fact, you had lots of reasons not to.
Yeah.
But now the
Tactically
forge is
speaking,
there.
yes.
You can defend it. There's this open ground around it, which is really interesting. And the forge space itself is different. And it's very intricate.
It feels that way, and it feels like it would be easy to kind of lock down a hole. There's a lot of walls. You can head up here, and you know, as Chuck said before, tactically not the best position to be in before, but now with all this added fortification and of course the payoff of a forge. Used to be like out in that wooden building, right, on the edge of the lake. Now we're dead set center here in the middle.
We also had the forge that was the Ice Haven Forge. We were also using in kind of multiple locations that same layout. So what we're trying to do is keep the forges from being the same.
Right.
Oh, that's nice. I did notice the touch of the arrows implanted in the barricades. So we wanted to give
Yeah, I
you
also
different
was thinking
layouts
that.
everywhere you went. And the really cool thing for me about this area is that, you know, now you can loot your way around the lake and then roll into the center to do your forging.
Right.
And the 3 levels of height gameplay should be really interesting.
Yeah.
Right, and as we said, it's kind of easy to defend more than some other forges, but there's also a catapult that is directly ready to lay siege to this thing. So, you know, if there's a squad in there and your squad wants to get them out, maybe you can go
got
for
a
a 2-pronged assault.
Orbital drop, shock trooper into the top level of it.
Yeah, maybe you drop your warrior in through the top as your mage or as your assassin and hunter are on the outside sniping or something
Yeah.
like that. There's some cool options here.
But yeah, the ability to catapult right onto that 3rd-story roof is one of the cool, exciting things about this particular combo of changes.
Right, and I mean, especially if you had someone trying to catapult in, and then there's another teammate laying suppressing fire on that forge.
Right. Because you are vulnerable when you land from that catapult, like you said, so you all probably need some help. You need some coordination to kind of make that happen. You will hear the kerthunk if you are the team trying to defend that. Very cool stuff here, the castle, all completely new to Ice Haven. New weapon teased on Twitter. I want to see it in action, though, the LMG. I don't know, do we forge this bad boy up? Where does this come from? What are the rarities like? How am I expecting to find this new weapon?
So it's only legendary, because really an LMG that isn't legendary, no, this is special.
Yeah.
And you're only able to get it from legendary chests and loot goblins.
Man, okay.
So
okay, cool.
That's where you're gonna go to find this thing. It is very powerful.
Better pack a punch then.
Very exciting. And it provides some different gameplay from
Sure.
a lot of the other high power weapons, which is cool.
Right. Okay, so what type of gameplay do we expect?
Well, and importantly, I think James's analogy, which is that, you know, a class having a class weapon, right, is like you're using a weapon that is designed for your class. You're getting the highest power level out of that. These crazy weapons like this and the potion launcher or whatever are that good for anybody.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about any class bonus leveraging. This is going to be a bad boy, only found from loot goblins and airdrop chests. So there it is in all of its glory, and Chuck does have that legendary sort of sheen to it. Of course, the bullets.
We've even got diamond
the
bullets.
bayonet, yeah.
Diamond bayonet.
This is going to be unofficially named the bougie patch. The red velvet catapult seat, the diamond-crusted bullets here. I love it, and you know that's the pirate way here.
Yeah, and this is an 80-round clip. I mean,
Yeah.
you can fire for a while. It's still going.
And we're coming around the end here, home stretch. Spray, and you BM that last 6 bullets, obviously, for the chicken. The other 74, hopefully it didn't take you that many to take down. So we're seeing about 130 a tick here. Big clip. Obviously, that's from up close. 195 headshot. Pretty quick fire rate as well.
Yeah, it's a little slower than the assault rifle, but
Okay.
it's got a good rhythm to it, and it's meant to fire at a rate where it's consistent, right? So if someone's behind cover, you can just fire off your 80-round clip, and unless they use a movement ability or someone saves them, they're going to want to stay behind that cover.
Suppression and more suppression.
So we're falling off there. I'd love to see just ADS and just sort of walk towards this target, and let me just see how the damage climbs. We were all the way back at 40, now we're climbing towards 80, up over 90, and then that's right about where you're starting to hit the triple digits. So that's your wheelhouse, right? You know, obviously you want to try and stay in triple digits. I think 135 was the top end that I saw there. 195 headshots, 130, so that's about 5 off there. So this is mid to close, but can still, you know, do your thing from long. You're going to be about half as effective from that distance.
I think mid is really your golden range. Up close, those class weapons that, you know, players are really good with, right? Like if you're really adept at the sword and you're building towards it, or you know maybe you're dipping in and out of cover with like a longbow and arbalest.
Sure.
That's probably gonna beat this.
Okay.
But when you're mid-range, you're able to consistently get that damage and land those shots. It's gonna be pretty powerful.
Does have the added benefit of being hit scan, right? One of the more consistent weapon types, I think, you know, works really well, translates well on the console as well. This is a weapon that I think a lot of people can draw, you know, cross references to and be familiar with. You know what I mean? You can pick this up and just understand what you need to be doing with it and probably how this is going to function. And that ties into, you know, I think a lot of these weapons designs, Chuck, you were talking about the shotgun. We want to make it look like it does what it does. The slug rifle needs to look like it does what it does. And this LMG certainly looks like it does what it does.
Yes, with the big box clip and everything.
Turn you into Swiss cheese.
Another really great thing to look at, you can kind of see him doing the firing and reload animations and all that stuff. While we were doing this, we made a pass kind of on everything of really getting the weapons fully synchronized, the animations, making sure most of
You
the
can
weapons...
actually see the bullets come up out of the box
Yeah.
the second he pulls the
making sure the
action.
weapons had the
That's sick.
you know, moving parts that indicate that they're shooting,
Yeah.
you know, making sure that we had perfect timing on the clip removals and re-entry and all of that stuff. So we made, not only did we, you know, add that in on this weapon, but on the other weapons as well. We really spent a good bit of time refining feel and sound and timing and all of that sort of stuff.
This is kind of a tangent question, just my own curiosity. When like a weapon doing that, like the bullets coming up out of the box into the chamber like that, do you rig a weapon and animate a weapon the same way you do like a character model?
It's pretty similar. We did use a trick for the LMG, which is that string of bullets is actually just a quarter arc circle of bullets that we can like
That just rotates
trickily
up?
rotate, so
Gotcha.
that we're obviously not feeding a chain of unending bullets.
You're telling me you
at a
didn't
time.
render 80 specific diamond-encrusted
Exactly.
bullets into my clip?
No, we did, and
Now I feel gypped.
They each have a different word written on them.
Oh man.
Yeah.
An
And yeah, I
80-word
love the way they
paragraph.
pop up and slide out of the magazine into the gun.
That's great. That's awesome stuff. So, obviously we have the catapults coming in here, a big fun mobility option, but we can't forget the core of our mobility in Realm Royale, which is our mounts. And we were just talking about, you know, emotes and rigging things and how to animate stuff like that. We had to show a little bit of a love to our mounts, so we added mount emotes in this patch. How will we be rocking these bad boys?
Right, so you're gonna mount up, and then similar to using a different emote, you're gonna be able to, on your mount, use the VGS system to activate a mount emote. And for each mount, it'll have its own. They're tied to the mount themselves.
Sure.
And they'll be able to emote, so the wolf might roar, or the horse might neigh.
You know, the mount special action. I love it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And that is It just comes with the mount. That is a part of the mount.
But
That's really cool.
it adds for some really sweet, fun options from a gameplay standpoint. So, like, let's say, you know, there's guys hiding out in the forge and you're outside and you're making your wolves all howl, you know.
Yeah.
like
You're
that.
covering up the sound of the approach of your assassin creeping around the back door.
And maybe, yeah.
Well, or you're even just, it's just psychological warfare.
That's right.
I can't
Wolves
wait.
at
I
the
mean,
door.
with so many different types of mounts, right? It's going to be awesome to see what this can become and all the, you know, funny little ways we can play with this and make it different. You know, animating and rigging stuff like that, is that tougher to do on these big mounts with a bunch of different legs and stuff like that that has to move around?
It's got some challenges and it's very different. The cool thing for us is that because of the way our animation setup works, it's very easy for us to introduce new mounts and all the player classes being able to use them.
Right.
So yeah, we definitely are able to have a pretty high mount release cadence.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's lots of cool mounts already. Right, and
Right.
we're still working on more ideas, right? We've got all sorts of ideas that we want to work on.
I want some next level like BM mount emotes as well. Like when I'm riding my giant parrot bird around from the Dino pack, I want to be able to just like poop a big egg out onto my opponents after I've defeated them as I ride off in the distance. So make sure you keep that in mind for me.
Okay,
I
keep
love
that-
I love the high BM, the high toxicity emotes
Got it,
for
yeah.
sure. Those are some of my most fun. Guys, we're going to hop into game real quick and take a look at the first one here. And of course, this is going to be the wolf.
Yeah,
as
the
you can
good
see.
boy.
So you VGS this, and what is it, VE for emote? Yeah, VE, so that just brings it up.
It's actually a mount emote, so it's going to be VM. It's a separate entry.
Okay, my bad.
And
Yeah.
console players are going to be able to find that too by pressing left bumper on Xbox or L1 on PlayStation. They'll
That's
find
right.
The keybind for it there.
We wanted to make sure it was a different entry just so it's very clear that this exists, right? It's not some sort of hidden thing that you have to know to emote when you're on your mount. And so that those two things are sort of separate. This is tied directly to your mount.
That looks really good, man. I love that wolf. He's got the eye patch as well. Very thematic, very cool stuff, and a lot that promises for the future and all the cool different types of mounts that are currently in the game that don't have one of these bad boys, and all the future mounts to come that will inevitably have later and greater emotes.
And we did also retroactively support this. So any mounts that like the bird
Yeah.
or the horse that we already had, those all have emotes now too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
think-
And before we kind of hop out here, we do have another map update here in the crossing that we're taking a look at now as well, Chuck.
We do.
Yeah, the crossing area has sort of, people have been working on this area for a long time. It takes a while to build a fortress, and they've
Stonemasons
come
don't
in.
grow on trees, you know?
That's right, they don't. So those stonemasons have come in, they've replaced the forge, they've continued to build out their structures, and now you've got this sort of cathedral-style forge
Yeah.
with a bit of a different layout that's the focal point of the crossing POI.
You know, I have to say, everyone's got their spot, right? Everyone feels a certain way about a certain POI. The crossing, when it was, you know, conceived in the very first iteration of it, wasn't a fan. But this place, I think, I don't know, I feel like it has evolved the most of any of the POIs, Chuck. Would you say that's true?
It's true, and definitely when you want to just drop into the hot zone and like,
Yeah.
you know, make sure you stay frosty for the whole match. That's the place to go.
I love it, man. I love it. You know, so much has happened. And that's what's really cool, I think, about Realm Royale and the map in general, is that, you know, we always are kind of evolving that, and it helps to keep the gameplay fresh. I mean, you're adding these new forge layouts. You know, at the start, they were mostly the same, but that's just because the whole game was new, and it was fun just to be in those forges and figure out how to play around that. And now I feel like there's a whole new set of forges, and you hop down here, you can bring up the forge UI, which of course looks super mean and clean, as does the rest of this here crossing. But that's one of the cool things you can do with a map the size of Realm Royale is continue to evolve it, right? You know, you can snow out one of the northern areas, right? And it's not going to affect anywhere else too much, but the rest of the gameplay is going to feel good in a place like this.
And we do have continued plans to just, you know, constantly be redressing the map and,
Yeah.
you know, kind of looking at areas where we feel like not only could the gameplay be improved, but we want to implement something new and cool.
Right.
And just kind of keep mixing it up as we go.
Well, that's great to hear. And I mean, the maps, that's the canvas, right? That helps tell the story. You know, what's happening in the realm right now? You know, why is there a big snowstorm up north? You know, the stonemasons come out in force and they make this beautiful new cathedral here in the crossing. And I believe that is going to do it for us in terms of our map updates and new weapon models, things like that. Our mount emotes, little warrior action hiding up here. We can shred him to pieces with the brand new LMG. And the next thing that is up next, of course, is our end of match lobby. After you score your Crown Royales, because I know you guys in chat are all a bunch of winners, what are we expecting to see now?
Well, now you're going to actually see what's happening, right? You're going to see your level ups. As you see there, leveling up our Hunter to Mastery 5, new talent.
Oh, I like that.
Look at that. And we're just trying to make all of the stuff that you are already getting very clear.
Sure.
Right? You know how much experience you're getting, you know the rewards you're getting, your battle pass, how close you are to unlocking the next thing, you know, level 66 here. And so this will be a lot better that, you know, you'll actually be able to know what you got out of a match.
Right, Josh, you were saying, you know, this is part of it's, you know, chicken nuggets are no longer a thing. That used to be a big staple of the end of match lobby, but now we've got all kinds of stuff, the battle pass, the masteries, the talents, so much to show there, and it looks like this is a really nice and concise way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Before it was a little difficult to tell how much you were earning, and one of the great things about the end of match lobby now is it shows you when you complete a quest and sort of verifies you are getting your reward for having completed that quest.
Sure.
So I think overall this is a good way for tracking how you performed, and you know you can compare one match to another. How did you do? So.
And it's fun getting to watch the animated sequence of all your earnings tallying.
I
up
really
for
like
what
that,
you
like that
accomplished.
talent tree thing, like
really
flying
cool.
down there. That was really cool. The next section, it's it's either going to break your heart or it's going to have you jumping in joy. It's the balance section here where we are going to tip the scales on some of your favorite weapons, and hopefully you all get what you want out there with this man is in control of the scales. So let's head on into it, guys. First weapon up on our docket is the Arbalest, and the reload time is being increased from 1 second to 2 seconds.
Right, so the Arbalest, it's a secondary, it's another version of a crossbow.
Right.
And one of the things that we've been
This is the big boy, right?
It's the big boy. One of the things we've been wrestling with this weapon is differentiating it from the other crossbow. We're trying to make it find a niche. So we've increased its reload time to help it like feel heavy, right? Like crossbow is fast and lean. This is big, heavy, longer range.
Yeah.
We're going to be keeping a very close eye on this weapon,
Okay.
but we want to take steps to make sure that it feels very different, unique, and powerful in comparison to the crossbow.
Love it. Alrighty, next up on the docket is the sniper rifle, and we are having the unscoped accuracy reduced by 20%.
Right. No scopes were just too easy, right?
Yeah.
Like you should be able to take that gamble on a no scope, but in a lot of cases,
Wasn't much of a gamble.
no, within 10 feet, you're like, I'm probably going to hit this, and that's not really how the sniper should work because it does so much damage. So now I think you have the choice of, okay, I'm within 10 or 15 feet. Do I gamble on the no scope, or do I spend the time cost to scope in and make sure that I'm going to have that accuracy and hit exactly where I'm aiming? We've also gone through, fixed a bug related to the sniper rifle.
Okay.
So no matter what, you will not ever see a crosshair on the sniper rifle. Only when you're scoped in, you'll see the scope. But if you're unscoped, no crosshair.
Okay.
And so
Obviously, most of this relates to that hip fire action, you know.
exactly, yeah. It's meant entirely for the hip fire. The sniper rifle is for scoping in and shooting people further away. We don't want to make it so you can't aim it up close.
You can't hit that montage clip.
There has to be a cost associated with it, and before there basically wasn't.
I hear you. I hear you. Makes sense. So next thing up is no longer weapons. That does it for our weapons section, but abilities coming up next. First up on the docket is, and only up on the docket, will be Healing Totem. The cooldown time is going to be increased across the board.
Right, so Healing Totem was in this space where the cooldown would go down with rarity, and the duration would go up. And so at the end, especially if you had cooldown runes or you spec'd into certain talents with the mage, your cooldown uptime was very, very high. We want to keep the ability being powerful. We just need to dial that back a little bit and make sure that when you place a healing totem, you're committing to that action, and you want to do that tactically. You want to like put it behind a wall, or when you're in cover and healing. So it's the cost of the healing totem is the fact that it can be killed. That's its weakness, right? And if its cooldown is too short, then that kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it's got a ton of uptime. That makes sense. Makes sense, of course. You have to be careful with that type of stuff when you've got talents and class specials. You know, you can get in some situations where
Right.
it could be frustrating, right? So keeping a close eye on that. Moving along from abilities into the talent section, our first one up is going to be Entrapment. We're reducing the duration of this route, I believe, from 1.5 seconds down to 1.
Right, so Entrapment would allow you to change net shot from a slow into a root, which is very powerful, gives net shot a very strong roll, and we thought that it worked well on an individual basis.
Sure.
But if you had a ton of people and you were able to lock someone down and focus your fire, or you ran multiple
I didn't
warriors,
think about it that way.
if you ran multiple warriors with multiple entrapments,
Right.
you could just keep someone locked down and they were guaranteed dead. So we're going to keep a close eye on this.
Okay.
We're going to try scaling back the duration, seeing how that affects the solo play,
Sure.
seeing how that affects the group play, because fundamentally Entrapment was working well, right?
Right.
It did its job. It's just in some cases it was too effective, and we're going to try and find the right fix to make sure that it's strong, it's got a good payoff. But when you look at that talent, you're thinking, ooh, I kind of want the other options too, right?
Yeah.
Like I kind of want to buff Healing Shout or Shielding Shout maybe.
I love those two abilities, and that's sort of, I think, the price you pay for a game like Royale. You know, we take on the challenge. We did this with Paladins as well. It's like when you give the players so many options and so many customizations and so many ways to play, you know, things will slip through the cracks, right? 4 warriors just locking someone down. By the time the 4th net shot's up, the first one's off cooldown again. You know, stuff like that might happen. So it's good to keep a close eye, but that's part of, I think, the fun of this game. So I'm glad, you know, you're keeping the spirit of it alive.
To an extent, that's actually the fun of the talent system. It's
Yeah.
just a case where it went too far, right? Like, we want players to be able to find cool and interesting builds like, okay, what if I spec into sword damage and then I go charge? And
Yeah.
so I'm charging and then swording instead of, you know, maybe your first thought would be Heroic Leap. Those sort of builds and things are really interesting, but in cases where they become a little bit too intrusive, then we have to sort of tone them back and find the right fix. So
You just want to make sure the synergy isn't exponential.
Right.
exactly, yeah. Avoiding that exponential synergy, we'll be keeping a close eye on Entrapment to make
Okay.
sure that it doesn't go crazy or hopefully not become useless. We want to
Awesome.
find that balance.
Alrighty, so the next one is also a talent. We've got Pin Cushion, reducing the damage amp from 30% down to 25.
Yeah, so there was this combo that on one level is really cool, but on the other level is absolutely devastating, right? Where you've got a crossbow with pin cushion, you're running exactions, your first shot after using dodge roll is stronger, and you've got like a sniper rifle or a longbow or something that hits really hard. So you use your crossbow, which increases the damage your target takes. You use exaction, which increases the damage of your next shot, and then you hit them with your sniper rifle or your longbow,
Oh, wow.
land a headshot, and it's big numbers.
Game over. Back to the lobby with you, sir.
So there's another case where we're trying to be careful. We're
Right.
trying to maintain that combo
But
because
again,
that
yeah,
is cool.
that's
and
the
it's
essence
fun.
of it.
And there's a big opportunity cost there. You're using your dodge roll, you're swapping weapons, you know, you might miss the sniper shot
Yeah.
or you might have to spend time scoping in. That's the cost. We want to make sure that the benefit is still good, and that's something that our higher skill players will want to try and do. But it was kind of, if you could land it every time.
You're
it
blowing
was-
people up before they can react.
Yeah. So we're scaling back pin cushion a little bit. 25% still keeps it viable over just the
Yeah.
raw 20%
Absolutely.
that you get as the default talent. Because if you're gonna say I'm only good with crossbows, that does need to be a little bit better than the generic talent.
Awesome.
And we'll see what happens. There are a lot of other pieces of that combo that we can adjust because
That's also very true. You know, when it is a multifaceted equation there, you
Yeah.
can tune a lot of different variables. It doesn't have to all be hit on one front. But any final thoughts there? That was our final change.
Well, it's the first patch after releasing this talent system. There's a lot of pieces to it, and I think as players are leveling up and unlocking all their talents, they're going to find a lot of new builds that change the game and change the way you approach the game.
Sure.
And inevitably, some of those builds are going to be crazy
Yeah.
and powerful, and inevitably some of them that maybe are intended to be something that you could do, right? Like generally, if you go down a column of talents, it should give you something kind of cohesive. If that's not really working, we'll be looking at buffing it. If something is too powerful, we'll be looking at nerfing it. But we want to make sure that the talent system is something that is effectively horizontally balanced. So you're unlocking new
Gotcha.
options, but you're not really getting holistically stronger.
Okay.
You might get stronger at sniping,
Right.
but you're giving up strength with your Venom pistol.
Awesome. All right.
There's not one synergistic core path that the player is always definitely building because it's just better.
Yeah, we want to, I mean, there's going to be paths where players like, I really like this, and I'm playing it every game, and that's fine, we want that, but when everyone's doing the same thing, that's indicative of either that thing being too strong or other things being too weak.
Gotcha. I hear you, and that's the fun, the ebbs and flows of the meta and how it all changes over time. I'm very excited, and I love the philosophy on that approach, and I think Royale's got a great little setup for some fun metas to approach. But our last thing up on the docket, Josh, you're going to specialize in this here, Mr. Community Specialist, our bug fixes, a very hot topic, of course.
Yep, we have been listening to a lot of feedback, and we're still working on a lot of things. We want to improve everything as much as we can. But let's go ahead and start up with some of the ones we know are getting fixed in 15. There were a few windows over in the Snow Cemetery area up north near Old Manor that you could not vault through, so we've addressed one or two of those windows. So it'll
They're
be
too
a
slick.
smoother-
It's just an issue
Yeah.
of personal safety at that point.
Yep,
Non-OSHA
exactly.
compliant windows.
Yeah, so we should experience a bit more smoother vaulting over in that area. And
Beautiful. You
sort
love
of
to
in
see it.
the same vein, over at Old Manor, over on the east side of town, there are these two buildings right next to one another, and there's this double window, and you couldn't vault between it. That's been addressed now. You'll be able to vault between the two buildings.
That window drove me crazy.
Yeah.
Every time I saw it.
I think you're gonna get away. It's like, nope, no entry. So those are nice fixes, nice quality of life sort of bug fixes, allow you to move around the map a bit smoother, especially when you're getting chased. Next up, we have addressed the issue where you can see lockouts for enemy players through walls. It could spoil your position pretty badly if you open a chest and an enemy now can see your loot,
The
on
loot
the other side of the
lockout
wall.
system. Can you clarify for me what exactly that means?
Yes.
Yeah, when you open a chest, the icon comes up saying this item is locked to this player that opened the chest. If a
Okay.
guy was in a building and you were watching the building to try
Oh,
to see
that
where he
little
was,
floating text.
and he opened
Gotcha.
the chest, you would see that lock pop up, and you'd be like, oh, well, he's right there, definitely still inside.
So sort of in the same vein, and this might even fall under a balance adjustment or gameplay adjustment, lockouts now only apply to friendly players.
Gotcha.
So enemies, if you are crafting and you're not quick to pick up your new piece of gear, an enemy can come up and yoink it from you or disenchant it. So you're going to want to be extra
In that
careful.
forge,
players.
those chests.
Yeah, you did only have a 5-second safety window before, but now it's 0. So you got to be ready to either pick up your stuff or to just knock them away, blast arrow or whatever.
Yeah, so that one's going to be a pretty big one. That's a nice fix, I think. In general, that one's going to be very good. Next up, we have an issue where sometimes the loot goblin would spawn and be impervious to damage. That's no longer a thing. So you will be able to start blasting your loot goblin as soon as you spot him now.
Gotcha.
Which is important because he is fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If you don't chase him down, you're not catching up to him. Next up, we have fix an issue where the VGS keybind would cause the class selection screen to appear while in the Zeppelin. So if you wanted to emote or spray in the Zeppelin and you press V or you pressed your controller button to pull up your emotes and your voice lines, you would pull up the class selection screen, effectively making it so you can't emote or spray in the Zeppelin. So that should be addressed, and you'll no longer be getting mixed inputs for your keybinds when you're in the Zeppelin.
More fun for everybody, and just less fun for those people who figured out whatever the secret method was for actually still doing emotes in the Zeppelin, which I never figured out.
And finally, we want to talk about, we addressed an issue where the inventory screen would get stuck in the screen while on the Zeppelin. This would result in you sort of getting a blurry overlay over top of your screen, and you couldn't really interact with anything. So we have found a fix for that. Players shouldn't be experiencing that anymore with our next patch. And that's just a handful of the things
Beautiful.
we've fixed in this patch. So there's a lot of really cool stuff.
Onward and upward, gentlemen. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining us. Thank you guys in chat for coming out and riding along with us. This has been, of course, OB15 Patch Notes, the inaugural Patch Notes show. And, of course, I look forward to doing these. Of course, like you mentioned, on the more regular schedule, you're going to opt for, 2, 3, maybe sometimes 4, however long it takes to make it perfect. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for coming out and joining me today. Thank you all out there in the chat. That's going to do it for us here today. We will see you all next time.